Fantastic. We're all good to go. Rashawn, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing good. And as you started, my daughter just asked me a question, so we're fully in it.
Oh, that's the home office for you.
Yeah.
We're happy to see so many of you joining us today. We'll begin in just 1 minute, but we're excited about the webinar that we're going to provide to you on how to teach and learn from a distance. Oops. Hello, everyone. My name is Bart. I'm a co-founder to Explain Everything. Today with me, here's Rashawn Richard, another co-founder to Explain Everything. Hello, Rashawn.
Hello. Yes, I updated my profile picture to be more representative of my social distancing state.
Me too. Who knows how we're going to look like in a month or two. We're super excited to provide you with our scenarios, 3 scenarios of how to provide learning and teaching from a distance using Explain Everything Whiteboard. So let us begin. And first of all, let me show you 3 housekeeping items that we have here. So ask questions at any time. You can using chat. We are streaming this live to YouTube, so you can also ask questions to YouTube. But keep in mind that we're going to prioritize those that are watching us on Zoom today, although we'll try to answer as many questions as we can. We record the session, so of course, obviously, it's going to be available later for reference. During this webinar, we're going to actually provide you clues how to engage with students. So you might want to try it out. Although when showing this collaborative whiteboarding, we have a limit of 20 participants at a time. But if you'd like to check it out, just wait for the moment when we'll share the connection code. If any questions would remain, we'll be happy to take them and answer them using our support email that is listed here. And before we begin, let me just kick off with this. We are going today to illustrate 3 scenarios that we wrote about in one of our blog articles. So if you already seen it, that's great. So this conversation of ours in this webinar is going to illustrate those for you. If you have not, I encourage you to see 3 strategies for online education and business that we covered in this article, and other resources like this article where we invite teachers to participate in our free extended trial where we open up Explain Everything for those that would want to see how it works in their remote teaching. So without further ado, let me briefly summarize 3 scenarios that we're going to cover today with Rashawn. And those scenarios are listed here. We're going to start with whiteboard videos. This is the scenario where Explain Everything is used to produce a video content that can be then shared with the use of links with your students. And Explain Everything is a great tool to provide those visuals that are kind of like, over the shoulder look of what you did on a chalkboard or whiteboard. But in this format, what you do on a canvas of a digital whiteboard can be streamed in the form of a video. So that's what we'll begin with. And then we'll cover how you can provide lectures by broadcasting screen of your whiteboard over a conferencing solution. This is something we actually do now. This is this visual part of the webinar as we're using our own tool broadcasted through Zoom and through YouTube. So you can see us going through the materials that we prepared. And last but not least, we're going to cover the scenario of collaborative whiteboarding. We know that during this time, it's hard to engage with students and it's hard to have this, authentic connections. This might be an answer, at least partial answer to this problem, where you can engage students collaboratively working on materials that are on a collaborative whiteboard. And we think of here about small groups of students that work together or together with teachers for, let's say, group projects or any type of exercises that you can think of. And we'll show you some illustrations today. Rashawn, out of those three scenarios, which one is the easiest to begin with? What's the entry point?
Well, I would probably say making whiteboard videos is probably the most familiar entry point, and perhaps in some ways the most kind of timely for the challenging circumstances that many schools and people are in. I think when folks are distributed or needing to be in place and also manage their own life priorities, it's sometimes hard to follow a synchronous schedule. So I think by being able to create asynchronous video content, whether it's instructional, whether it's student work or anything in between, I think there's a lot of power and value in being able to like have a different kind of asynchronous communication mediated by video, especially if your default is to send an email or a website post or a class page post.
Is it at the same time your favorite scenario, or is it not?
I don't know. I don't know if I have a favorite scenario. I think it all depends on the setting. I like these live settings as well. I mean, we're living. I think you kind of mentioned we're living almost the intersection of these two, right? We've got the fact that we're using Zoom and YouTube to broadcast this experience.
Yes.
But I'm sharing my Explain Everything canvas, and I mean, people can't necessarily see this, but both Bart and I are together here on the canvas. So we're both collaborating on the canvas page, but we're also broadcasting our intended experience for all the many folks who are joined in right now.
Correct. So we're actually doing this. We're broadcasting and collaborating together. So this is something we'll show you how to do during this webinar. So shall we start with explainer videos?
Sure.
Okay, so let's do that, and maybe after each section we'll just open up for questions. So please go ahead and ask them. For those that participating, ask them in the chat window, and we'll try to cover as many as we can after Rashawn illustrates each scenario.
Okay, and I did notice that this one we've called it advanced. I'm sure there's some folks who, well, it's hard to know what's advanced versus not advanced. That's such a broad continuum. What I will try to do as I'm talking and sharing different things, anytime there's any like behind the scenes stuff that might be interesting or useful for other people, I will try to call that out. So like one of the things that you may have noticed me fumbling around with my buttons. Actually, let me turn on my so I'm in the settings here. So this sometimes is helpful. We have this built into our tool, but I'm going to turn on display on screen taps. Now I'm on the iOS version right now. So now wherever I'm pressing. Now I did notice that there was somebody in our project here, Bart, who I wasn't sure if we were ready to collaborate, unless that's Kuba. So maybe you behind the scenes can just avoid any unexpected activities. We of course welcome collaboration, but we also like to fully know with whom we're collaborating. Another thing we've been doing is like zooming in and around, and that's part of like the infinite zoom of Explain Everything. And I also had triggered this presenter mode at first, so it kind of hid some of the toolbars while Bart was speaking, because one of the things that we've just done is like I'm sharing my device through Zoom, but since Bart is also connected, he was actually driving what you were seeing during that. So again, these start to get a little bit more sophisticated, and obviously we have experience because of our relationship to the company in how to like create those types of visual outcomes. but we always like to know, well, hey, this is a cool thing that's possible.
But then again, that's why we call this session advanced. So
Yeah,
if
yeah, yeah.
you'd like a slower pace, introductory pace to those three scenarios, we invite you to the session that we'll have in 2 days. That is going to be for those that are just beginning with whiteboarding. So
Yeah,
today we might go crazy.
Yeah, so apologies, but maybe you'll find it interesting and then come back to the basic one and see how that's going. So let me see. I think this will change the slide. Oh, perfect. So what I'd set up here are these kind of 3 placeholder places to model some examples, and then Bart will also share some ideas. So I mean, people who are connected here probably don't know too much about me. So I wear like a bunch of different hats, and I'm living through this situation from many of those perspectives. So I do work full time at a school, at a school that serves early childhood through middle school in the Northeast United States, and I'm an administrator there. So I'm in full blown distance learning, planning, and support there. I also teach at Columbia University in New York, who has also gone fully distance. So in about 2 hours and 20 minutes, I'll be teaching a synchronous class to about 30 students who are distributed all over the globe, because those students were all told to go home during spring break, which was last week. And then I'm also a parent of 3 young children. So we've got that going on as far as their own continuous learning and physical separation from the school during this time. And then, of course, my work with Explain Everything, trying to work with a company that's also dealing with these challenges as far as trying to move work forward. So it's all of those perspectives, which are, of course, it's completely challenging and exhausting, but at the same time, it's a really powerful learning experience, and I'm appreciative of that. I wish this wasn't happening, of course, but I always try to be cognizant of that. So through that, I share that because from the teaching and learning perspective, I pulled out in the whiteboard video context. I can switch back to the standard view. For whiteboard videos, I've thought about like 3 contexts that are coming up frequently for me and for my colleagues, where a whiteboard video can be really helpful. And so the first is when a teacher is trying to communicate to a student or group of students asynchronously by creating a whiteboard video. And I mean, the operations of it are pretty, I don't want to say simple, but straightforward. This was the original reason Explain Everything, when it first was created 9 years ago, what the intent was, like, how do you make it easier to communicate visually across distance and time? And when you hit the record button down here, I'll just point in this direction. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. I'll do the laser. In this area, everything I do and say is captured. What I want to model is importing content, because while I've practiced being able to like draw and speak at the same time while recording, I do sometimes like to stage content. So I'm going to go, I use, a whole variety of cloud storage, but I'm going to go to this folder here. And this is whiteboard video teacher to student. So here's an example. I made this slide deck just using a Keynote template, like similar to PowerPoint. And I made a 4-slide exercise in another tool. In Explain Everything, I can import single page, multi-page documents and decide how I want to stage them. On this screen here, right before inserting it, I can choose how it's going to be laid out. Now, some people might really like the separate slides option, especially if this is your first time using it, because it will create a separate slide for every page of your slide deck or document. I sometimes like, depending on the context, and in this setting, because I'm trying not to overcomplicate our project, I'm going to import all 4 of these slides in the grid form, and you'll see them appear. Oh no, I have to choose insert. There they are. And they're nicely grouped together. And oh, here's a trick. Notice how this is like slightly askew. And sometimes that drives people crazy. If you double tap it, it will straighten out. So there's a little funny tip number one.
It's
So if
very
I was making, oh, what was that?
it's a very powerful tip.
Yeah, I use it a lot. So here's something else I might do if I was making an instructional video, teacher to student or explanatory whiteboard video. I might actually frame it like this. So this is what the audience member is going to see. They're going to see something that looks full screenish. They have no idea that there's all this other craziness around it. And I'm just going to kind of talk through it. Let me I'm going to do another little trick here. I'm going to choose lock vertical because it's going to let me scroll to the right smoothly. Let's see what happens. I believe this will work. Okay. I'm recording. My audio is not really recording because this is kind of complicated here, modeling, making a whiteboard video. So we are writing our own persuasive letters today. And let's go over what we've done so far. We've read and analyzed examples provided by other people. We found some new examples. We've analyzed structures of formal letters. And you've all thought about issues or challenges that you want to write about. And today's assignment, now that you've selected your audience, is going to be to write your own letter. So here is what you need to do. As you're writing your letter, you go through this checklist. Okay, I am not an English teacher. I modeled this after something I saw somebody else make. So what's happened right now is that 47-second instructional video or content is now in here. And I'm just going to hit playback so you can see what's happening. You're not going to hear the audio pass through because of the way I'm currently set up here. Let me pull the timeline up. And so on this timeline, there's actually these like visual representations of the actions or activities that I was doing. So now you're going to see when it slides over. Okay. And then there's me writing the check mark, and the sound bar isn't actually showing in a waveform again because I was muted, but it's a good placeholder to understand that the bottom part there, and hit pause and fast forward to the end, is there. Oh, go ahead, Bart.
So a few thoughts here, because, you know, Rashawn is doing everything at the same time. Obviously, it's because we're running an advanced session here, but you don't have to do it that way. Explain Everything provides you with the ability to take it step by step and record few things and then record over again to add additional elements. So that's a nice trick, because if you could, Rashawn, if you could show where there's a button to control the experience of how the recording happens. Currently, Rashawn is using the mix mode. It's hidden here and it's a default. That means you can record over and over again, adding new elements, but you have to be careful not to record your audio twice, right?
Yeah, and so like here's something that I've definitely done before. Maybe I'll model this in the other example. I'll append my recording. So let me zoom out. So all of this was happening. I'll move this back over there on this big canvas here, but the video output would only be like framed in that playback. So it's a cool dimension and something to understand. Most of you probably wouldn't be creating a project within a project like we are right now. But I thought it would be helpful to model that. Here's another example. So here's another context where I think a whiteboard video can be really helpful if you're a teacher trying to communicate to parents, so especially if you're working with younger populations or and you know, any kind of distance learning, you're relying on parents and caregivers to be helpful there. I'm going to import another file. This one came from an activity that some of my colleagues actually did a couple of weeks ago on a parent day. I'm going to just say horizontal insert. So here, this is just a PDF that I didn't make, that I'd gotten from NASA. I believe it is all fair use. If not, credit to NASA. What I might do first is I'm going to record. Actually, let me do this. I'm gonna do a little craziness. I'm gonna, just because I want to actually no, let me show this. Do you see this option, delete all from here? So when you press on the timeline, you get some options to like clean up or edit the timeline. I'm trying to like clear out the recording. That's one way to do it. I actually just thought of another one. if I go to the slide sorter, can't I choose a slide and delete the recording?
Yes.
Remove recording. Yes. Let's see what happens. So now I'm back to like where we started with the content, but now there's no recording. So that's sometimes a helpful thing. So yeah, I wanted a blank slate, a clean slate. So let's go back to here. Sorry about that. Look, I'm going to paste that document back. So here's something I might do. I might first record a talk track, and then I'm going to go back and add my annotation. So watch what happens. Hello, parents. We are going to be doing a fun do at home activity where you're replicating a lunar landing using found materials in your home. Okay, so that's a very short talk track. It wasn't very helpful. But when I go to rewind and I go back to this mix mode, what's going to happen when I press record is that the audio is going to play back in my headphones. And now I can draw things. I can zoom in. I can describe these found materials and so on. And what's happened is it will layer those visual actions on top of my existing recording. So cognitively, this might be helpful for many folks who it's hard to both draw and speak as articulately as you'd like to. So you can separate those two tasks. Some people like to draw first and then narrate over their own visualization. So you can split up those two elements as you see fit. Just doing the quick playback.
Fantastic. And just to ask you one question, Rashan, before you go further, you like better using slides, presenting them, recording them, using this open canvas, or you rather divide those PowerPoints or documents to have the separate slides for each page?
I personally usually separate slides. That's just
Okay.
my own design choice because I like to have that level of linearity, but then flexibility within the slides. But when I'm thinking if I'm doing a presentation or a talk or something, I like the cadence of like a structure or a flow. But I also try not to have too many slides. I'm usually
Right.
only like a 5 or 6 slide type of person.
So here's a related to that question, because Amit tried to say the same, dividing recording between slides. And he's asking, in my presentation, I go back and forth between slides, but it does not show in the recorded video. The video only shows slide now, slide 1 recording, then slide 2 recording, and so on. Can you explain what's going on?
Yes. So I just added a bunch of blank slides to the end of my of our presentation here. So I'm just on a blank slide. So here's slide number 1. Here's slide number 2. And here's slide number 3. So when I'm recording, each slide has its own kind of recording track assigned to it. When it's exported as a video, Explain Everything automatically stitches those all together. I think the effect that Amit is describing is recording on one slide, going to the next slide. And when you're in a single user environment, you can actually scroll from slide to slide and the recording continues. But then wanting to go back a slide and then continue recording, right? So to have that seamless thing. What I would recommend, and again, this might be an interruption into your general flow, if you're trying to go back to a slide that existed before, I would use the slide sorter and duplicate it and then move it in sequence so that the output for your audience, it'll feel like they went back, but that you've really basically taken a copy. And if you're copying a slide that has recording on it, you get the option to copy it with or without the recording. I'm going to say without. And so now, again, this is advanced, but now even after you've like modified some content on one slide, you can duplicate it so the output effect for your audience will feel like I just went back to slide 2 or whatever. But in reality, you've orchestrated it this way.
Great, thanks for explaining that. There's a question about where those lock options are hidden in an interface. Can you show inspector real quick for those that are watching?
Yes, this is one of my favorite areas to play around in.
Really?
So let me first. So check this out. So in some configuration of clicking and tapping things, do you see how I tapped the inspector, which is here, and then when I selected, I just wanted to select this PDF, but like all of these things got selected, right? And when I did it, I did it with a slight gesture, even more got selected. So what's happening is when I choose the eye tool, the inspector, with my stylus or finger, if I'm precise and just tap on a single object, it'll choose that object and anything grouped to it. So watch, I'm going to tap on the PDF and you'll see the markup, my arrow and my circle are also included in there because those drawings got attached to it. These all move together. But when I have like a slight uptick, or a little gesture with my finger, it's actually doing like a rectangular select. So it's actually selecting a whole bunch of stuff. So that doesn't mean they're all grouped together, but it's just to be, it's good to be aware of what those dotted lines represent. The locking feature in the inspector, under the edit menu, there's arrange, edit, and lock. And so to get that cool scrolling left to right, if you lock it vertical, that means I cannot move it up or down. So I'm trying to move it up or down, I can't, but I can move it really smoothly left and right.
Great.
And then conversely, I could do lock horizontal and it moves really smoothly. I can also do things like lock scale. So now, while I can move it around and even rotate it, I can't accidentally shrink it. So sometimes that's helpful. And you can also lock rotation. So now, while I can move it around freely and resize it, I can't accidentally make it askew. So those are all just kind of interesting effects.
There are so many options that you can, discover with Explainer Everything. Unfortunately, we'll not be able to answer all questions related to Explainer videos. So let's go to this last illustration and move to scenario number 2, as we'll try to keep this webinar around 1 hour.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, when it comes to the student to teacher, again, it's sort of advanced. I don't think we have to get too much into the detail. I think it's more about the context that the same, if you think about like the creator and the audience, that especially operating across distance, if your students have access to a device that Explain Everything can run on, if it's valid for a teacher to explain something over video, then you can put that power in their students' hands so that they can literally like take a picture of something. So let me see if there's my kids. So me and my cousins in Massachusetts, or my kids, they were playing like a Lego challenge where over FaceTime they were given a theme to create. This is following that Lego Masters show. So it's try to create a school scene with Lego pieces. So a student could take a picture, or a parent can help them, and they could hit record and just talk through what they created. This was a garbage can. This was a cup. This was a backpack. This was the chalkboard, and so on, and be able to share that. So that's just kind of a powerful way to be able to share, have students share using the same concept of making whiteboard videos.
Right. So my suggestion for those that are asking questions related to editing and shooting videos is that we do have a lot of materials covering this ground. We actually had dedicated webinars related to video creation process, and we're going to have new ones as well. So you can use our webinars subpage of our explainereverything.com website to check the recordings that we have, or sign up for those new webinars on the recordings, where we'll be able to answer all of those questions. Of course, we'll try to chat with you and answer as many as we can, but for the interest of those that are interested in other scenarios that we're going to cover, how to teach remotely, we're going to move forward quite a bit to the scenario number 2. But before we do that, I just wanted to mention one thing related to video creation. If your aim is to shoot a video, let's say a lecture that is an hour long or longer, The good practice to share a video with students is to use our cloud features. Rendering video that you create in Explain Everything sometimes is time consuming. So there's no need to lock your device. You can use web video link creation. So we provide you with the easy to share link where the video will stream. Rashawn, I don't know if you're ready to show that option using your device.
I'm almost there. So I will explain what this is. Again, one of the elements of this new mode of working. So if anyone was here before we started, I mentioned how I only have one USB-C charger in my home because the rest of them are locked in my office that I can't get to. And my iPad connects to my MacBook with a USB, but then my Mac battery started dying. So I have just switched over my situation here. And hopefully you didn't even notice that, like, all of a sudden it just looks exactly the same as it did before.
Yeah, I'm broadcasting now from my device. So let me just show you where we have web video link creation. So let's suppose you have your video ready. It's on Explain Everything, and you just want to share a link with students. You can use this option here, create web video link, to upload project to the cloud, where we render a movie from it, a video from that will stream with the link that you can share with your students. So this offloads your device from necessity of rendering video before sharing. Is there any other practical tip that you want to share with those that are interested in this scenario, Rashawn?
You know, I sometimes like to, I don't know if you shared exporting the video locally to the device. Did you already talk about that?
We have not, however, we can cover that as well. When you export video here, you have option to export it in a form of a file. But when doing so, the rendering will happen on your device, but the result will be a file that you can upload to, let's say, a school system or YouTube, or even store it locally.
Cool. So maybe you should stay connected there and jump over to slide 3, and I will drive.
Fantastic. Let's do that.
So this context, this thing about live streaming a whiteboard, is exactly what we are doing right now with the collaborative element to it. We are using Zoom. Right now, Bart is sharing his device screen. How are you connected, Bart?
I'm actually connected without any cable to Zoom with my device, and my device exists as a separate participant to the call, and I'm just broadcasting screen of my device so you can see it on the call.
Cool, got it. So I think these types of experiences are really helpful, probably skewing with older learners, or so, you know, maybe middle school, high school, certainly higher education. But also, I think it's really helpful to think about, you know, adult interactions in any organization. So whether it's teacher planning meetings, large staff meetings, or if school leaders, organization leaders are trying to communicate to large audiences in any kind of town hall format. Certainly with tools like Zoom or Google Meet or Teams, you can like broadcast a PowerPoint or a slide deck and like click through it. But what we have found is the organic nature of being able to whiteboard and have it feel natural. It lends itself to a different kind of experience. And you know, you think in a meeting room or a classroom where you have like a blank canvas, even on like a marker board, it invites contribution. Whereas when you're presenting rigid slides or information, like, you know, it sets people up for a more passive experience. So in the context of teacher to students, I would say that the same exact example of like a preloaded, you know, a slide deck that you might have made in another program might be a place where you bring it in. So I've just now brought in that same content, but instead of recording this time, I would talk through it live. Hello, class. Today we're doing persuasive letters. Guess what? Here's what we've done so far. And Bart, I was really happy with your work in your draft, ... So like there's ways just to be able to activate content you've already prepared. And if, in the case where we're collaborating too, which we'll get into during the tail end of this, you could also invite other kinds of opportunities. When it comes
So
to
real
like,
quick,
oh, go ahead,
before
Bart.
Before we go to the second context, real quick, because there's a basic question: how do you transfer screen sharing in Zoom to explain everything? And I would like generally cover that, how you transfer screen sharing in any conferencing solution to explain everything. If you use explain everything on a tablet, you can start screen broadcasting. It's actually in the interface. Oh, sorry. It's actually interface here. You can broadcast screen, and if you tap it, you'll see that I'm currently broadcasting my screen to Zoom. If you're using a different tablet, let's say Chromebook or Android tablet, you won't find this option. I don't know how to.
Sometimes there's a delay for it to dismiss.
Okay, really? It does not. Okay, let me just start broadcasting again. Yes, it has a delay. Maybe that's why we're doing so much on those tablets. When you're broadcasting from your Android device, the option in interface will not be there. We're going to bring that button to Android as well. But for the time being, you can use broadcasting button that is within your conferencing solution. So in Zoom, in Teams, in WebEx, they all have an option to broadcast your screen, so you can start it from there. Actually, that's kind of like a bug. I cannot like quit this one.
This is good. It's good when in real time we find new software bugs. So
Yeah.
I want to try. I mean, I know we shouldn't do this during a live webinar, but let me see if I'm able to rejoin.
Maybe try to broadcast from your device, and I'll just.
Yeah, so I think it's also good for participants to notice that, right? Even everybody, if you face these funny bumps during these kinds of situations in your own context, everybody's feeling it.
Of course, and
Yeah,
just be aware, this is quite a complex scenario because you were using two pieces of software at the same time: explain everything and conferencing solution, and they have to work together. So sometimes those things happen. Okay.
All right. So this is me. This is my iPad. Is it visible?
Yes, it is.
All right. And we're back in the project.
Cool.
Nice. So yeah, I'll share this context very, very like briefly. I mean, this is just to like think of ideas. So imagine you are an administrator and you're trying to communicate your new remote learning or your remote work situation, that having the flexibility of a whiteboard, like explain everything in the setting, especially like with the Zoom and being able to like get around. So imagine you're working, like we've got 200 people connected at least live right now. It would be very hard to run like a communicative or discussion oriented staff meeting with 200 people. But you might have situations where there might be like 40 or 50 people that you're trying to communicate with, or even 200. And if you want them to see the thing that you want them to see, being able to zoom in on it like helps direct your audience. Too often in these settings or with calls, it's like, all right, well, I've sent you an attachment with these materials, and now I'm expecting you to be able to follow along while also listening and watching. Whereas using this kind of open-ended canvas to guide the audience towards whatever parts of the experience you intend can be really just a helpful facilitation method, regardless of the setting. I mean, it's true again, even with students, but I'm thinking of also like organizations that are going to have to start meeting differently because of the current situation. This is a way to use the live streaming of a whiteboard in a certain way, and the same kind of goes over to communicating to a broader community. For example, if you were doing any kind of like town hall type meeting, because I'm sure there's folks who have questions about a situation. The simple act of like listening to people and like confirming that you hear them, and like either you or a co-facilitator kind of whiteboarding out, or even just documenting. You can even use text boxes. Documenting what's being shared is a powerful way for people to know, like, all right, not only is somebody presenting to me, but they're also hearing me. No, I can't change the color of their text boxes. So that's just something to think about if you're trying to continue or extend certain types of conversation media that you no longer have access to because you're not able to convene face to face. It's a really simple use, but it can be really powerful, especially when folks are having trouble feeling connected, and in some ways having trouble feeling heard. There's other crazy things that you could do. For example, I don't know if my iPad keyboard will show up. This would be disruptive, but it might get, your Zoom toolbars might be hiding it, but in a lot of software, you've got the microphone feature. So we have things built in where like you can dictate into a text box and it would type out. I'm afraid to try it. I'm just going to try it. I'm dictating into the text box. So there's a thing. So something went wrong. I think I canceled it before it finished typing. But hopefully you saw it starting to type there. So that's a cool thing. Let me zoom out here. I want to be cognizant of the time.
Sure, but there are a few questions that are quite advanced, so let us explain the situation here, because there's a question from Russell related to sharing your screen if you're connecting with Explain Everything. And Russell is actually using his laptop for Zoom sessions. So let me just show you what is the situation. When we're providing this webinar, we're broadcasting ourselves. The view from the camera actually is the view coming from computer, where we are connected on Zoom to this very session. But we also have Explain Everything broadcasting screen to another version of us, another participant of the call, that is Explain Everything. So it's two of us on the call when transmitting both video from the computer, from the front camera, and broadcasting screen of our whiteboard here. So that's the way you can do it. I would not recommend this for not advanced users. The most basic scenario is just to go with your whiteboard, having just one participant on a session. That's you broadcasting your screen of the whiteboard to the session participants. But it's, as you see, for us, it's working quite fine, but it's still, again, this is an advanced scenario of using two devices at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, this is essentially like a co-facilitated webinar, right? So yeah, we're really going nuts here. I think in most realities, it would be one person sharing their device, like somebody said in the chat, through a screen share. And then we just happen to be also co-running it. So both of us are connected through multiple devices in order for this effect, really where we can both write together and drive the whiteboard canvas pretty independently. And hopefully to good effect for audience members.
There's one more tip that we can share with you, as Jeffrey asks about having in-picture video of yourself talking while using Explain Everything on a call. You can actually try to do that when you're connected with just one device, that is a tablet broadcasting screen to the Zoom session. You can choose new object and bring in your video, but you cannot do this in a collaborative setting. If you're just yourself, if you're just one person using a local project, you can add video object and turn on video camera on your tablet and broadcast screen of your whiteboard together with this video object to the participants on Zoom session. However, it might not work with all of the conferencing solutions. So there's an advice, that's an advanced option that might not always work.
Yeah, I think if you're live broadcasting, I would lean on those solutions, transmission of voice and video in that setting. I think they're they're well suited for that, and use explain everything for the whiteboard. I think, I'll do something dangerous here, Bart. I'm going to leave and I'm going to re-enter, but I'm convinced it's going to work. I'm just going to open a
Go
blank
ahead.
project.
Everyone would understand this is a session for advanced users. And thank
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
for support here on the chat. Thank you very much.
So to get to what Bart was saying, so now I'm in a single user mode, and you'll notice in the insert menu that option for video is there.
Right.
I wonder what'll happen. Oh, look, there I am.
It works. Yeah.
Again. So this is a crazy view. I apologize, audience.
It's okay.
So I could be talking. I would set it up on a tripod and find a more favorable camera angle, but I can record, and I could be talking, and I could be drawing, and all of that is getting captured in there. Again,
so that's an intersection of scenario number 1 and 2.
Yes, yes. But I would, again, it's hard to find a good camera angle with the mobile device. You have to set things up nicely and be thoughtful of your audience, be merciful to your audience.
Yet it's still possible.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that's
yeah.
fantastic.
So I'm rejoining now the session with Bart. So now you're kind of seeing the behind the scenes.
Yeah.
What's going on. It's so hard to not want to answer every single chat question that's coming in.
To be honest, we love it. We love to explain
Yeah.
everything. But because of time, we just need to move forward to scenario number 3, that is collaborative whiteboarding.
Yeah. So what we've set up here are just some canvases. Now, some of you may have taken a screenshot of the code. Bart mentioned before at the top, like, for this, we didn't design the whiteboard space to have like a million collaborators on it at once. It's just not productive, right? You would think about like small groups or teams who are actually trying to build something together. I think if you're just trying to have people cooperatively add content, you're better off like working with like a Google Doc or a shared Word document or something where it's just about everybody's input. Our intent with the collaborative whiteboard space is really about people working together, right? So whether it's in a peer support role, whether it's teams ideating, whether it's a tutoring scenario, whether it's extra help or enrichment or something like that, that's the idea. So what we'll say in the background is, if anybody has a second device or a web browser or something like that, and you want to be one of the first, we'll say 6 or 8 people who send a message to the panelists, Kuba, who's also working behind the scenes here, he will send you a direct message back through Zoom with the join code. And if this works successfully as we're talking, we're going to start seeing people populate here. So while that's happening behind the scenes, again, just send a message to the panelists, and we'll send you instructions. So my background is as a math teacher. So I literally just set up this kind of angle relationships exercise. And if I wanted a small group of people to work together to like solve this image, right, to demonstrate their understanding of angle relationships and collaboratively problem solve, here's kind of like a template that I could set up. While this is all happening, let me just show something else. So say I'm like super proud of this structure that I've created. Another one of my favorite things to do is to take structures that I've made and do what's called add as clip art. What that's going to do is, in my clip art in the insert file menu, I will now be able to reuse that structure. And what's even more awesome, let me go to one of my blank slides that I created before.
Mm-hmm.
What's even more awesome now is that when it added in this object, it actually preserved its structure. So I could now, say this line here, I'm going to ungroup it. And now, I want to move this line over here. So I can create reusable structures of objects just by saving them to clip art. And I think it's just like one of the best things. Like if I teach in an area where we're constantly using a particular type of diagram or flow chart or something, I could set it up once in the way that I want it. I have no idea what this is. and add it as clip art. And now forever, it is a reusable object whenever I want. Here's another one like that I made some other time, another structure. Here's like a little tree, and these are all editable. Even more so, I could take, oh, so I'm in multi-user mode. In single user mode, this option here, save as template, you could create a project and save it as a template so that every time you start a new project, it becomes one of the ones that you can reuse. Oh, it says we got to change the permissions, Bart.
I just did.
Oh, okay,
Sorry.
yeah. Whoops.
We were restricting this experience too much.
Yeah, sorry about that. So if you happen to join, one of the things that we're going to be introducing is the option to, quote, follow the presenter. And if you manage to join, I see already one person is coming in. Head over to slide 4, and in this area where it says students with students, just start filling in any of the values that you can. You can use a stylus to write in, right? So if I know that angle B is 90 degrees,
Oops. Mm-hmm.
I could write that in. Or if you're on a desktop or you don't have a slick typing interface, you can just type in a text box. So lots of options. Oops. So what's going to happen here too is I'm going to switch over to Ninja mode. So while students might be working in one area, I could actually shift over here and talk about something else, but those students are actually still in progress on this side. So in theory, you could also have some students say, hey, you're going to work on section A, and some students you're going to work on section B. Again, I wouldn't do it with more than 6 or 8 people because it just becomes like an unwieldy experience, and just it's not a good experience, right? It's technically possible to a degree, but that doesn't mean it's the best way. Let's see. Okay, there we go. All right. Yes, and you know, unlike some other meeting tools that are used with children, we haven't instituted any kind of really crazy controls over like lock this person, kick that person. Yet we're also trying to, another reason for like using explain everything with small groups. It's about trust and manageable communication, not control.
Absolutely. Yet there is an option for you to restrict editing features. If Rashawn, if you could show us invite here, it says here we can set permissions using these controls in invite menu. It says anyone with the link can edit, and you as I'm the owner now, so it would be me to change that. I can switch this to view only. That means anyone that would join will be able to change slides, move around, but won't be able to edit. So by this, you can kind of like control the experience and allow editing options for those that participate or not, or just viewing options.
Yeah. And what's been happening in the background is you'll see that a lot of content has now been filled in by our wonderful participants. Thank you for your commentary.
Thank you very much. Few tips before we continue, because there are questions related to that. We designed this that there's a limit to 25 participants, but as Rashan suggested, it makes sense to have groups of 4 to 8 people at the same time. Also, those that want to participate, they can do so using any version of Explain Everything out there. They can use tablets, Android, Chromebooks, or Apple iPads to and connect using Gesticode, or connect with browser. Although with browsers, it is a different experience if you use Explain Everything that is designed for hand input and pen input. If you're using browsers, usually you will see people struggling with palm rejection, even if they have computers with multi-touch screens. So we highly suggest to use tablets for the best of Explain Everything.
Yeah, and you know, if people are joining in from a browser, just encourage them to use imported objects, drag and drop images, and use text box instead of trying to handwrite with the trackpad or maybe with a touch screen that wasn't optimized for pen and writing input.
But what we see here happening, this is really awesome. So thank you for participating in this collaboration with us.
Yes, now kick them all out, Bart.
No, I won't do that. Let's see what happens. Please stay with us, and we won't be offended if something goes wrong with the content. So just play around.
Yeah. So, and people who are in there, you'll notice I just forced the view. I turned it off of the Ninja Zoom. So now everybody who has joined has followed me. And, you know, again, there's so many contexts for where this is helpful. And we've done other versions of this webinar. You know, the example we just did was like a teacher setting up a collaborative experience for students. Another option is if teachers or any group is working together, you can import a document, and then, you know, I wouldn't know, you could use it as kind of an evergreen planning grid that you go back and refer to, because the Explain Everything project is persistent. So it works like a shared document. If you had access rights to it, you could leave this document and come back and continue working on it. So you can have this kind of everlasting canvas or whiteboard space that you can continue to build off of. Now, depending on what you're working on, there's probably other shared interfaces that are also good for that. But from like the early stages of collaborating, the ability to get raw and, you know, unpolished ideas down, this might be where you brainstorm those things. And then once you feel like you've got that polish, you move it over to something a little bit more rigid. So this is where how to like template collaborative experiences amongst adults. So it's like, hey, let's use this to get ideas out, and then we'll move it to a more polished state later.
So Rashan, let me get your take on this question, because I had two conversations with teachers that teach younger students, and I had two different responses about their favorite scenario of using Explain Everything. First of those teachers said, to those young students, I'm only able to broadcast my videos, so I create them with Explain Everything and they're watching. And the other teacher that I spoke to mentioned that for her, what works best is engaging those young students, having small groups in a remote setting so they can participate and express. So what are your thoughts when you're thinking about young learners?
Yeah, so I think the whiteboard video is a really powerful way with young learners, especially when there's the physical separation, because they will appreciate seeing and hearing the teachers that they're used to seeing in a routine basis. I think that's what, I mean, everyone craves routine, but especially young people. And you then also have the opportunity to do much more. You know, if you've got the permissions to take photographs of book pages or have other kinds of content that allows you to share it in that way, or share it in private or secured settings, like that can be really powerful, where not only, sure, you could videotape yourself holding up a book and reading it, but if you had like a closer picture of the book page on the same canvas, you could have, sorry, I'm zooming out for people. Like if you imagine the canvas, you know, you could have the book page here, and you could have your happy face here, right? And that could be a really comforting thing for the students, not only to hear and see you, but then also to be able to to read the book along with you, right? So that, you know, it's actually a little bit more of a legible experience. From the collaboration standpoint, I also think there's some opportunities just for like unique togetherness pieces, though I would still recommend that if with young children in any kind of new environment, it's always good to have adults present to be as kind of co-facilitators and mediators, because while young people certainly are very facile with the tool, I think in this distance learning setting, it's always good to just be careful and thoughtful about what types of experiences are being designed for children.
Fantastic. So we're almost out of time. So let us wrap up with the slide number 5, sorry, just to show you a few options in terms of versions of Explain Everything and resources that we recommend to learn more about Explain Everything and remote teaching. So here you have information about pricing for education. As I mentioned, we offer now extended free trial for those that would want to give it a try. During this difficult time, we are happy to help by providing access for the extended period of time so you can see how it works for you. But once you're familiar with options and you feel secure and confident in using Explain Everything, we highly suggest to help other teachers that would want also to try it out for free and just purchase a subscription if that's possible. Few helpful resources that I'm happy to share with you here. We receive quite a bit questions related to versions of Explain Everything and what is the difference if you're using EDU version that is limited to iOS only, and Explain Everything whiteboards that run across different platforms. We do have a great resources that is in the pricing and also in our help center that I highly advise you, suggest to look into. There is a video illustrating those differences, so please go ahead and check it out. We also have a very nice article that illustrates all of those differences between versions, because there are sometimes differences in operating systems, and those platforms are not all the same. That's why we created an article where we described all of those tiny detailed changes between those versions. So if you're looking for that, there's a Help Center article as well. But in order to get more information about scenarios that we shared today, we encourage you to see our 2 playlists on YouTube. First one is related to essential skills, the basic skills that we covered in Explain Everything Essentials course. It's out there, 6 episodes for you to watch. And we also include live collaboration in one of those episodes. But if you're more interested in broadcasting your whiteboard and you would want to see that executed on different platforms in different scenarios, please check this playlist. It's called Better Online Meetings, Use of Digital Whiteboard at a Distance, where we present all of those information in the video format. And of course, as mentioned at the very beginning, we do have our blog and articles illustrated also with the use of videos. So go to our blog if you're interested. I'll show you where it is. explaineverything.com/blog. You see, I'm using Explain Everything whiteboard to show you browser. explaineverything.com/blog. If you go there, you'll see all stories, tips, and inspirations directly from Explain Everything on this page. So Rishan, I see that you added a video while I was talking. What was it about? You're muted.
Sorry, Kuba had sent something to us that there were just some questions about if you're using Explain EDU on iOS, that the broadcast button that you had shown under here isn't there. The way that you would access the same thing is just to use the iOS menu, where you swipe down, and then you would use the broadcast here and then go back and reopen the app. So it's kind of closing a different kind of loop. It just happens in the platform version. It's integrated right in.
Right. Thanks for that. So today, during this webinar, we were not able to answer all questions. So I cannot say that I'm happy that we explained everything. It's impossible during this limited time of ours, but we encourage you to join our next webinars. They are listed on our product page, and ask questions on YouTube and also using email. That's support@explaineverything.com. Let me just put it here for you. Maybe not white on white, because that would be quite difficult to read. Support@explaineverything for you. And just to mention recently, because of the situation, we have quite a bit of questions coming through that channel. So if there's a delay in communication, we beg your pardon, but we answer every email that comes to us. Rashawn, any closing thoughts from you?
Well, thanks everyone. Thanks for staying around even a little bit later. Two questions, or one question that came in that, or both might be answered with the same one. In collaboration right now, people can freely explore the project. So anyone who's still joined actually could be bouncing around to any number of the slides. And that sometimes is useful. Again, you want to have set up the norms and the trust around that, right? For that kind of collaborative experience. I would say if this is all feeling brand new, just start simple, right? Find something that you need to communicate to somebody else, even if it's literally recording yourself reading a typed message and bringing it in. That could be something, a helpful way to start.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rashawn. And I see a lot of questions coming up at the very last moment related to materials and manuals and text and PDFs that you can use offline. We're happy to share it with you one-pagers that we just created that describe those 3 scenarios. I'll just show you real quick how it looks like, where we covered the basic of those 3 scenarios that we spoke about today. So for those that register it, with the email, what will come is a recording of this webinar together with materials such as those printable PDFs that we're going to share with you to allow you easy start with explain everything. Thank you very much for participation. Thanks, Rashawn, for providing us with those illustrations. And I hope that we can see you soon next time during one of our webinars.
All right, stay safe, everyone.
Stay safe. See you. Bye.